There are many issues on which the Prime Minister and I will passionately disagree, but when it comes to the security of Ukraine and support for President Zelensky, we are, of course, united. And I too would wish to commend the Prime Minister on his announcement yesterday and indeed his leadership in the summit with our European allies and indeed our Canadian allies too. Unfortunately, this afternoon it's been reported that President Trump is set to meet with American aides to discuss withdrawing military aid to Ukraine. Are these reports something that the Prime Minister recognises, and if so, what impact will that have upon the timetable he and President Macron are currently working to?
I haven't seen reports of the US withdrawing support for Ukraine, and as I understand, that is not their position. I thank him for his support on this issue, although I was somewhat concerned that the SNP is continuing its suggestion that now is the time to abandon the nuclear deterrent. If ever there was a time to reaffirm support for the nuclear deterrent, it is now. We mustn't reduce our security and defence. I think it is a completely wrong-headed decision they should reconsider.
We were all horrified by Friday's scenes in the Oval Office. President Trump's attack on the brave and dignified President Zelensky left everyone shocked and appalled, except, it seems, the honourable member for Clacton. Nobody else watching those scenes could fail to understand that we've entered a new era, one where the United States prefers to align itself with tyrants like Putin rather than its democratic partners. On these benches, we've supported the Prime Minister's actions and leadership. Britain leading the world, as we have so many times in the past, bringing together Europe and Canada in London to work towards a just peace that guarantees Ukraine's sovereignty and security. But, Mr. Speaker, we need to reduce our dependency on the United States. Because I say with deep regret, I fear that President Trump is not a reliable ally with respect to Russia. And with that regard, did the Prime Minister discuss with our European allies our proposals for a new rearmament bank and for seizing the tens of billions of pounds worth of Russian assets to support Ukraine? And in his conversations with the Canadian Prime Minister, was he clear that we stand with our Commonwealth ally in the face of President Trump's threats? Mr. Speaker, many of us were confused by Lord Mandelson's comments yesterday. So can the Prime Minister confirm that they do not represent government policy? And does he agree that the British ambassador should not be freelancing on American TV? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will have our support if the UK continues to lead with our European and Commonwealth allies for Ukraine's defence and our collective security.
I thank him for his question, and he talks about the scene on Friday afternoon. Nobody wants to see that. My response was to recognise the urgency of the need to repair the breach, which is why I spoke to President Trump and President Zelensky on Friday night and again on Saturday night, and are continuing in that work, because for me the single most important thing is lasting peace in Europe and Ukraine, and nothing is going to deter me from that or lose my focus on that. On the dependency on the US, I don't agree with him. The US and the UK have the closest of relationships. Our defence, our security, our intelligence are completely intertwined. No two countries are as close as our two countries, and it'd be a huge mistake at a time like this to suggest that any weakening of that link is the way forward for security and defence in Europe. On the question of a rearmament bank, yes, I do think we should continue discussions with others as to what the possibilities could be, and that formed some of the discussion yesterday with our allies. Again, on assets, he knows the situation is complicated, but there are ongoing discussions. I spoke at length with the Canadian Prime Minister yesterday because we had a bilateral meeting as well as the meeting with other colleagues, in which I was able to assure him of our strong support for Canada, a close ally of ours, a strong supporter of Ukraine, and Canada have led the way on the training that's been so vital to Ukraine. So they were very welcome at the table yesterday. In relation to the ambassador's comments, look, the plan is clear. We're working particularly with the French. I've had extensive conversations with President Macron over the last week, intensively over the weekend, talking to Ukraine as well. Those are going on at the moment, and the intention is to then have discussions with the United States in relation to that plan. So as soon as the details are available, I'll share them with the House, but they are still being worked on at the moment. There's no guarantee of success, but I'm not going to let up until we have done everything we can to ensure peace in Europe and peace for Ukraine.
It may be a great irony that a Remainer Prime Minister used Brexit freedoms as effectively as he did yesterday. Indeed, as Number 10 briefed, we are now in a unique position compared to the rest of Europe, and yesterday was a triumph. I also applaud him making such positive words about President Trump and our relationship with America, even if nobody behind him agrees. But here's the key. President Zelensky has now accepted that he's going to sign the minerals agreement with America. And America's going to put in $100 billion or whatever it is, and thousands of Americans will be in Ukraine. Is that of itself enough of a security guarantee? No. Or does it mean that we need to send British troops? And if we do, given the size of our army, how many?
The mineral deal is not enough on its own. But can I just remind him, Russia is the aggressor. Zelensky is a war leader whose country has been invaded. And we should all be supporting him and not fawning over Putin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the Green Party, can I welcome the Prime Minister's strong support for Ukraine, his work for peace, and his commitment that there should be no decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine. But given the scenes that we saw in the Oval Office on Friday, which people across the country will be aghast at, given the bullying tactics of President Trump and the fact that Trump clearly views this as a business opportunity, how will the Prime Minister ensure that the interests of Ukraine remain front and centre of the peace deals?
By picking up the phone to President Trump and President Zelensky and making sure that we can focus on what matters most, which is lasting peace in Ukraine.
Dr. Rosanna Allen-Carr.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I congratulate the Prime Minister on bringing European leaders together at the weekend and for setting the record straight with JD Vance on the issue of free speech. President Zelensky is resilient and brave, just like the nation that he represents. And in the second week of the war, when I went to Ukraine with my medical team, we could see firsthand that there was absolutely nothing that the Russians will not do. So can the Prime Minister promise that our support will not waver and he will continue working closely with our European allies to make sure that we bring about peace in Ukraine?
I can give her that assurance. We will not waver. We will work with our allies.